Primarily, just want to remind the audience this is about breaking into PM, and we have a ton of insights in this episode for you.
Thanks for coming, Asif, and thanks for being so close to the Haas community. Asif is the Director of Product Management in AENs in ServiceNow.
Do you generally have a data scientist in the product team, or is it an external function, or how does the org work around data?
Yeah, we do have data scientists in the team, and it's really about using their time wisely.
Is it really important to have deep domain experience before getting into the role, or compared to B2C roles, or how would you in general differentiate capabilities needed to be a good B2B PM versus a B2C PM?
You could also go from the other perspective, right? Like you could pivot out of product management into other domains, so long as you understand the domain that you're trying to get into. I do think that there's something to be able to lean on the experience that you have and finding the discipline of product management that is closely related to it, so you could develop those skills.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to grow in that space?
Yeah, I would say take risks.
Does that mean that now PMs need to master like every field? Do they need to be like a jack of all trades?
I mean, they've always been like kind of a jack of all trades, in my opinion.
Can you paint the picture of one good thing that happened that you are really proud of?
I've launched a few products in my career. There's a lot to choose that I feel very proud to talk about.
I'm curious to know, how do you see the PM field? Is it sort of like a strategic role or rather tactical?
Yeah, I'll go back. One of my mentors at the time told me that strategy is easy, execution is hard.
In this high level role as a director, how does your week look like?
A lot of it is talking to customers. I try to talk to at least 3 to 4 customers a week.
How do mentees make good mentor relationships, and how can we be more intentional about it? Hi, welcome Asif. Welcome to the episode. This is Beyond the Backlog. We are your hosts. I'm Devansh and my friend
Kevin.
So, Kevin and I are super excited to interview one of our beloved Haasis, Senior AI PM. He is Director of Product Management now. Congratulations on becoming a director. Asif's career has been very impressive. He has done so many things, and we'll get into all of them. Primarily, just want to remind the audience this is about breaking into PM, and we have a ton of insights in this episode for you. We'll start off with our traditional meme reviews, but we'll eventually get into all those insights that you want in this competitive world where you have to go follow your dreams, become a product manager, and we are here to guide you along the way. With that, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Asif, and thanks for being so close to the Haas community. I'm going to introduce you briefly. Asif is the Director of Product Management in AENs in ServiceNow. Your career was from analytics and consulting in Accenture, to PM at Workday, Roofworks, and now Director at ServiceNow. Thanks for coming, Asif.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For our audience, it will be great if you can explain in your words what you do and how that will be useful for our audience. We know you're a director, but what are you directing? We would love to know about your world, your day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what I do is I'm the Director of Product Management for our generative AI offering, which is now morphed into AI agents. Specifically, what I look to do is infuse this technology into technology workflows. So let me give you a classic example. So at ServiceNow, a lot of our customers lean on our software to be able to fulfill services. Things like getting you connected with a outcome such as maybe a password reset, which is a very common problem, but it's very difficult to solve. But it can also range to more complex use cases like adding people to a distribution list, or even going beyond that, like looking at the person's direct reports and making sure that they're part of a distribution list. My profession and what I like to do is really understand the core of those problems so that we can figure out how we apply generative AI to solve them efficiently for the customer.
Interesting. ANAS. That's a really interesting topic in these days.
Oh, yes. It's all over our feeds.
Of course.
So when you say, is there a way to measure your is there a KPI assigned to your role, or how do you show success?
I think ultimate success really comes down to, is a customer happy with the product, right? They pay us money so that we can provide them a solution, and the economics have to work in their favor, right? It has to be viable to them. It also has to be viable to us. This is the common definition of MVP. And so when we look at our customers, we just had our conference last week. I had 2 customers, Juniper and USI, go on stage to talk about their experience with AI agents, them being an early adopter, and having them talk about how they're able to scale their operations, right? Operational efficiency is things that we learn about here. And so our technology really helps them scale their operations so that they need less humans to be able to serve their employees. That means they can grow their business without having to grow their support team.
It's just there's an important thing. Yeah, this is a B2B space. So yeah, it's basically about implementing the AI solutions to customize needs and really niche needs according to each client. So yeah, curious to hear more about that in this interview. As in,
Absolutely.
But before that, we'll get into the traditional format and we'll get into some cool memes. Product management and memes. You can't take them apart. So here's the meme review section. So we will get through a few memes, watch them together, and I will ask a question perhaps which is related to what we are seeing here.
Sure. Let's do it.
Right. Meme one.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
You can see from his face
encapsulates-
that he doesn't understand anything, but he has to be confident. It's his vision.
I don't know if he looks confident, but he's trying his best.
I love it. Yeah, that reminds me of a meeting that I had earlier this week. You know, it's fun to see engineers get so excited about what they've built, but they're like part of the job of being a product manager. And why I love that meme so much is like you always have to translate it back to like what was it we were trying to accomplish again? Like I get that we're excited about the technology, but we need to get my job is to really embrace that side of it, but then also turn around and say, okay, how does this help a customer? Right? What do we do with this technology?
Take a step back and look at the problem at hand.
You need to also absorb it. You need to be part of that. We're all in this together. What's interesting to me might not be interesting to them and vice versa. And so if you embrace them, they also embrace you. And it just creates a nice symbiotic relationship as a result of that, just understanding each other.
Let's go with the second meme.
I love now one.
Oh, wait. Now it starts.
See, the newspaper.
Here's the fires. What will the PM do? I can do this all day. Like nothing happened. How many fires have we put out last week?
Wouldn't out of sometimes it is really about like just hey, is it really a fire? Like it feels like the world is collapsing at times, and it is very true because I was at our conference and I'm getting messages like, oh, this is not working, that's not working, and it's like, should we send an alert to these people? Should we send an alert to these people? And your job is really to maintain that stoic feeling among everybody else, which is we don't really know yet. And it's okay to feel this way, but it's also okay to just take some more time to think about it, get to a more confident feeling around the problem before we start to take action. Because the last thing you want is more panic. That just creates a lot of fear in the organization. And I do think that, sometimes you have to be that anchor for everybody to just kind of come around so that we feel like, okay, there's a belief system and we're all leaning in together and we can move forward.
There are some times that it's okay to just leave some fires there.
Yes. Sometimes, they are very helpful because they do like create some motivation in other areas too. So you do, sometimes you just honestly don't have enough time to put out all the fires. And it's less of like, there are unintended consequences of doing so. And some of them are positive. They result in positive outcomes because you really get to see how people respond without too much oversight. I've seen a lot of people grow as a result of that. So sometimes it's in your, like, you should just trust the team and you can lean on them and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Thanks for sharing. I will refresh this because I have seen it with players from making decisions in ambiguity.
Yep. That I love that. One of the lessons I learned here was that in the land of the blind, it's the one-eyed person who rules all. And sometimes you are just moving with like very limited data and it's enough to move forward. And sometimes you're literally just trying to like get enough time to get more data so that you can take it to the next level. But I definitely do see PMs in the organization, and you're kind of wondering like, hey, where exactly did you get that data point? Like, why is this solution such a good idea for us to move forward? It happens. And, it's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of, we at Haas, we're grounded with confidence without attitude. And so really it is about, using data to drive decisions. So use that as leverage, especially as aspiring PMs go into the workforce. That is something that truly differentiates, in my opinion, like a strong product manager from other product managers. And I think Haasis really do embody that belief.
Talking about data in the product management fields, I've seen that it has become more and more common that PMs also get like empowering, also getting their own data, using also technical tools. I could imagine like SQLs, for example, by themselves to not rely on other things to make also things like faster in terms of analytics. What do you think about that, like point of view?
Oh yeah. I mean, I like SQL is one place that you can get you can start to interact with data with SQL. Like nowadays though, like I would go directly to like ChatGPT or one of the LLMs that we have access to and that we're building, and just using the LLM to do a lot of the heavy lifting. It's really about asking the right questions. It's never about performing the functions. That part is easy and you can always ask someone to help you out with that. But nowadays that's even faster. Yeah, you don't really need to ask anybody. You could just get started real quick. Once you get enough conviction in a direction, then you can lean on some experts like some data scientists to take it to the next level.
Do you generally have a data scientist in the product team, or is it an external function, or how does the org work around data?
Yeah, we do have data scientists in the team, and it's really about using their time wisely because they're always busy on like more strategic operations. But when you're incubating something, once you develop enough conviction, then you get a lot of leadership buy-in, and resources then become a lot easier to get at that point.
Interesting.
That's cute.
So saying yes to everything can haunt you later on.
Yeah, that is very true. Like it is really hard. So one thing I've learned is it is really hard to say no, right? And there's a great book about this. It is Influence is Your Superpower. I forget the author, but she's a professor at Yale. And she has a chapter in this book where she says, say no for a day. And I think it's one of the most empowering things. So I would say that, leadership will typically come with very specific asks. And sometimes they're not in the weeds. And so they don't necessarily have all the context and information that you have. And so they do really need you to come back and reframe their mind so that you're both working in the same direction. And so to me, it's less about saying no to things. And it's more about like, what is the objective that we're trying to accomplish? And let me help figure out the tactical next steps. And so you're really trying to work with leadership and your peers to make sure that you're all on the same page together.
I can recall a similar instance. We were running a workshop here at Haas, and the prompt is a Slack message from a leader that we should build this feature. That's it. Now we have to figure out, okay, what were you thinking? What was the process behind it? Is there another way to solve the same problem? So I think that's something that we all need to learn way more.
I love that approach because I think it showcases a lot of agency from the other side because they are not just, following like a particular like indication, but rather like thinking proactively about the overall like objective. And I think I find that really powerful, especially when you are basically trying to not only think about saying no, but rather thinking on getting things done in general, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Love it.
That is it. We just had 4 memes. What are your thoughts on the format?
So far, so good.
And we're going to the next section. I'm pretty interested in this topic because we are combining 3 main concepts: the B2B space, AI, and also product management. So I'm curious to know here, first question, how did you get into the B2B space? You're coming from consulting, data analytics. So I'm curious to know what happened there.
Yeah. So my background is analytics, right? That's what I was doing ever since I can remember. And what I would do is I would go to customers, and my last project was at Amazon where I was helping them better understand like their retail sales type of transaction data, right? So it's a lot of fun working with big data at that time, which was like cutting edge. And what I found to be very interesting there was, one, if you can understand the business problems that they're trying to solve, the technology just naturally comes with it, right? Understanding how to use the technology to get to the problems became like kind of instinctual. What was harder for a lot of people is understanding the business problems. They can write awesome like code, but if they're not tuned into the problem, it's really hard for them to display and create like, assets and deliverables that the customer is really wanting to have. So I use that information, that knowledge of understanding what our customers were after, and then going into the product management space, I could really anchor on that understanding and just safely learn the product management skills. As a consultant, my job was try to understand what the customers were trying to do and use the product to get in that direction. Now, since I had a strong understanding of what the customers were trying to get to from an analytics perspective, I could adapt what they had at the time and evolve it in the direction so that it too could be on the same level as some of the homegrown tools that.
Got it. So the domain expertise, especially when it comes to B2B PMs, is it really important to have deep domain experience before getting into the role, or compared to B2C roles? Or how would you in general differentiate capabilities needed to be a good B2B PM versus a B2C PM?
Yeah, so I can't comment too much on the B2C, but I will say like there's something to being able to lean on the strength of your understanding of the domain So in my case, it was analytics, and specifically it was like financial reporting, it was financial analysis, that type of work. And then being able to see the product for what it is and understand how do I develop the skills of being a product manager so that I can build better product, create those types of outcomes. You could also go from the other perspective, right? Like you could pivot out of product management into other domains so long as you understand the domain that you're trying to get into. So I do think that there's something to be able to lean on the experience that you have and finding the discipline of product management that is closely related to it so you can develop those skills.
Got it. And speaking of developing skills, I'll move on to the next section. Our audience is mostly aspiring PMs or early stage PMs, and they would love to know that how does a hiring manager evaluate the skill sets needed to do the job well?
Yes,
And since
yeah.
you're here, we're happy to learn more from you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We just hired someone from Miro and she's a rock star PM. She doesn't have a lot of strong understanding of ServiceNow or what we're doing. But one of the things that we looked for during the interview process was, does she have a growth mindset? Does she understand that she can always get better and that the team and contribute to the culture of the team that is also just continuously improving? Artificial intelligence at the end of the day is supposed to improve, right? We want the smartest product out there. There is really no way of competing unless you have the most intelligent product out there. And so growth mindset really is, in my opinion, kind of not table stakes, but it is one of the main deciding factors, what we look for when it comes to strong product management.
And how do you test these skills? Like, do you lean more on behavioral interviews or case questions? What's your style?
So we do look for, design interviews are probably one of my favorite. I do ask a lot of design interview questions, and they can be very uncomfortable at times where we just ask a very generic question, like pick a product and break it down for us. And then we sit in awkward silence as we watch our candidates go through and struggle through the motion. What we look for is this person asking questions? Did they come prepared? Are they asking questions? Are they really honing in on the problem space? A good candidate will spend a lot of time just evaluating the problem, making sure that we understand the problem before spending the last couple minutes trying to solve it. I've seen other candidates that will jump immediately into a great idea. And it sounds like a great idea on paper and you can understand it, but it wasn't really what we were looking for in the interview process. We just wanted to make sure that we could align on a problem space first and then slowly break it down into multiple possible outcomes, and then just picking one based off some evaluation criteria, and then moving forward as a solution.
Got it. And if you can tie it to why is this so important to be good at defining the problem?
In my experience, and I think this is true, you can read a lot of textbooks on this too, is that it's much easier to align the organization around a problem than it is a solution. Oftentimes when you come in with a solution, people are trying to reverse engineer the problem, and their instinct is, well, that maybe that's not the right solution that we should be working with or working on. But if you come with a problem, people will either agree or disagree. The other thing is, don't be so tied to your problem that you're willing to die for it, right? Like, it really is okay to just say it was a problem, but now it should be a shared problem for the entire organization to solve. And that's really important. Because if you can separate yourself from the idea or the problem, then you can build more support around it. And for better or worse, if it's a bad idea, let's just not do it, right? And you don't feel as bad and nobody else feels as bad. But if it's a good problem, that everybody will believe that it's worth solving, and you will get more than enough people to raise their hand and say, we want to help solve that problem, which is really, in my opinion, the fun part about product management is really about bringing together the right team. And it could be who is assigned. It could also be just an informal group of people that just come together because they saw a common problem to solve. And those are actually the most impactful for the business.
I just have a question. So this is a B2B space, this connecting the dots. In this, for example, design questions, usually these design questions are famous in the B2C space.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a particular preference, because personally, I find it really hard to deeply understand a B2B product if you are not working to that. I don't know if you have faced that problem before, for example, when you were trying to get into that B2B space.
A good question. Actually, when I went to ServiceNow, and at the risk of them watching this and questioning, I didn't really have a strong grasp of what ServiceNow did at that time. I think it was a product that I engaged with, but I didn't understand the importance behind it. And, I don't think that should really, prevent people from moving forward. What I do think is it does show up in an interview if you do your research.
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I interviewed, I did extensive research on the product. I got a firm grasp of it as I was going through the process. And over time, I think that just willingness to learn about somebody else's where that person works does come through in the interview process itself. And I think that's an important way of connecting with that individual, making them feel that you are committed in this direction too.
Actually, I was interviewing for a B2B role, and I asked them for access to the premium product, because if I haven't used the product, then I won't be able to give any constructive inputs. So I think that's a good idea. You can just ask access, at least you have used the product, and figure out the industry a bit with whatever limited time we have. But it becomes more specialized and niche, and B2C is a completely different world.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. Like at ServiceNow, we do make our instances available. These are like the actual application that a person can log into. Anybody can get access to it. There are certain facets of it that are walled off, like the generative AI component, because for cost reasons. But it does allow you to get a sense for what the product does.
That's great.
And then you can imagine and start to use like ChatGPT and start to figure out, okay, well, how could this get better when infused with generative AI? And then I would also recommend take a look at the community sites if any of those companies have them, if you're interviewing anywhere. Also, they would typically have like webinars and YouTube videos, like get a sense of like what people out there in the community are talking about, and you'll get a better sense of problems that it's trying to solve.
Personally, the webinars are the best resource for competitive research. Like, what are the other competitors putting out? We can access demos of others and get a lot of rich insight from there.
I actually joined a webinar today in the morning from Splunk, and it was a 3-hour webinar, but it was really pretty detailed step by step. And it was I got an access, like a temporary access given by them only for this webinar. So pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I totally agree with getting our hands into the product is the best way to learn about it. So now you know that ServiceNow has their resources available. If you're interested in researching about the products, go for it. So continuing the conversation about growth and capabilities, my last question in this file is about any advice that you would like to give to someone who is already in the B2B space and who is looking to grow in that space. And you are in a pretty interesting space, B2B, AI, PM. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to grow in that space?
Yeah, I would say take risks. Be okay with taking risks. You'll actually be very surprised to learn that leadership is more than happy for you to fail. Right. So long as you do it in a constructive manner, right? That's actually the real definition. Psychological safety was that you were supposed to be able to go out there and try something and not feel any repercussions for failing in the process. Right. And so, I hear this a lot from my leadership is like, go out there and take a chance. Right. It's okay. In fact, I had one-on-one with our executive vice president, and he asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up, or career-wise, where do you see yourself aspiring to? And my answer to him was, I don't know yet. All I know is that I'm going to go out there, make a lot of mistakes. I fully intend on learning from them and incorporating the learnings so that I can continuously get better. And that spun off a great dialogue of how he encouraged me to take more risks and really go out there and try something new, put myself out there, and he would have my back. So I thought that was really cool. And I do think that anyone who is kind of not afraid, but maybe has a misunderstanding that maybe their boss or the boss's boss may be taking what they have to say or be afraid of like showing some type of vulnerability, or I would say challenge that. Ask them. If you don't feel comfortable taking the risk immediately, maybe just have that conversation with that person and see if it's truly a valid feeling that you have.
Thanks for sharing. Are you going to ask an additional question there? Because, for example, for people who are really like working into integrating like AI components and features, they are also probably dealing with different challenges. From your perspective, for example, what advice would you give to them to keep growing in that space, in this new era is AI like we are living? Do you have any advice or any recommendations for folks who are in that space right now?
In the AI space? Yeah. I would say like anchor yourself on the business problem, right? Like there are some two core tenets that still exist in every business, and that is they're trying to grow revenue or they're trying to control costs. And so if you can apply technology, whether it's a generative AI, whether it's an AI agent, or, even classical machine learning, it's how are those two things, or how are those things really impacting either top line or bottom line? And if you can make the connection, I think you'll have a lot more support in the organization. People will always look to you, and they will always look for that type of business case. And more often than not, you'll get a lot of support in the organization.
Right.
Thanks for sharing, Asif. I'm curious to know, what is your perspective on the PM role nowadays? I see more common that the boundaries of what a PM is able to do are increasing from designing, coding, engineering, and every other task. And now you have different tools like Lovable, Windsurf. So, what is your take on that? And does that mean that now PMs need to master like every field? Do they need to be like a jack of all trades? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they have to be, I mean, they've always been like kind of a jack of all trades, in my opinion. What I would say is like, at least in this world of product management, what I do on a daily basis, or weekly, I should say, is, I'm still researching problems, right? It really comes back down to what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And is it so well defined that now the solution becomes something that is imminent? We know that we have to solve it. May not be 100% obvious, but I think we could all, like, you can align engineering, design, research, everybody in the same direction to really develop a, what do we call it? Coalition to solve that problem, right? Now, with generative AI, I think it really accelerates that, and it does blur the lines between all of the disciplines. I'll give you an example. I'm working on a product right now, and I've gotten to the point of like researching the problem, and the temptation to use generative AI to like see what a potential solution looks like was overwhelming. And so naturally, I went to the LLM, asked it some questions, gave it the problems to solve, and it actually came back with a pretty good solution. And as a product manager, I'd still say like our discipline should be, don't get too far into the solution because you're ultimately going to run into more resistance in that direction. But what that does, and I would encourage others to do this, is it starts to reveal new problems that you didn't really think about. Because as you can vision the solution, you can assume that like an engineer and design and research are going to come up with something much more elegant than you could ever. But you can also anticipate some of the pitfalls that they might run into as well as they go and start to execute. So you get to kind of dabble in that direction just to see what the next potential hurdles might be. And then you can quickly come back out and add that to a PRD.
So you can level up the discussion with the other like areas like really quick by basically understanding probably like most common errors in the first like runtime.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us about the prototype and PRD thing, like you were mentioning before the podcast? Like you
prototype.
start with prototyping and then use that to build a PRD, and how AI has changed your workflow as a product manager.
Yeah, exactly. I got this idea from another product manager that was on campus, and he was telling me that he'll like research some problems, and then he'll quickly take those problems to the LLM, and then he'll come up with an idea, and then that in itself will start to translate into the PRD. He'll just ask you to create the PRD. I think that's a fantastic idea, to be honest. Like this is really about how do we use generative AI to work more effectively, more efficiently, so that we can get more product out the door faster, right? So it really does accelerate your throughput. And so I see that as a phenomenal idea. And I've definitely taken that and started to use that myself.
Great. I will ask this question. Like, I love examples. You shared one example, painted a picture. Would love to know an example where, like, what keeps you driving? Like, if you are a director of product management, it's because you have some badges on you. Like, I've done some great things. That's why trust me. And that's why I believe in my ideas. Can you paint the picture of one good thing that happened that you are really proud of?
Yeah. I'll first start with, I don't see the badges, to be honest. It is mostly the responsibility. When put in a situation, you see an opportunity and I feel more a responsibility to solve these problems or develop and incubate and nurture these problems than I do like the pride of solving them. That naturally comes, but what drives me is the responsibility. And I do encourage a lot of people to just kind of reframe their thinking in that direction, because I hear a lot of aspiring PMs say that they're passionate and they're like, oh, this sounds like such a cool thing to do. I think that most organizations are looking for people who see this as a challenge, a responsibility, that the person who is coming into the organization, that's the only person who can solve that problem or who can take on that role. So now getting back to the question that you asked, I've launched a few products in my career. There's a lot to choose that I feel very proud to talk about. One is called Automation Discovery that I launched in 2021 or 2022. It was a product that incubated. It's AI driven. What it does is it looks at a customer's data set and then it figures out all the different use cases that they could automate, whether it be through writing a knowledge article, whether it be through some sort of integration, perhaps like some sort of, chatbot interaction, like a topic or something, or maybe they just acknowledge that this is a problem that can't go away, and the best that they can do is operate more efficiently around that use case, right? And that was a product that we launched. We incubated it very closely with some customers, and eventually we got to a comfortable state where we said, let's GA this product. And it became recognized by our chief product officer at the time as one of the things he was most excited about in that release. That was one. And when I was at MoveWorks, I helped incubate a lot of products over there. Most notably, I think there was a product called Knowledge Studio, and then another product around enterprise search. I didn't see those things all the way through, but I was working with a fantastic engineering team and design and research team there. And they did eventually GA after I left, and I was very excited and proud to see those things, and very happy that they continue to push those things forward.
What do you mean with GA, sorry?
General availability. So when it becomes available to the market.
Push to project. So you mentioned two great product that you had shipped. And like you said, we as PMs have to talk about the problem space a lot more. So would love to understand what went into discovering those problems, making them so important that you built a coalition around those problems, and then eventually led to success.
Yeah, absolutely. So what made those, one, I had the support of our chief AI product officer at the time to continuously learn and continuously develop an idea. And, what was nice about that was the problems that we were solving were really around helping customers get started with some of the product that they already purchased, right? So I purchased the ability to create conversations in a chatbot solution. But what conversations should I be creating in the first place? It became a very difficult problem for our customers to really grasp, because to do that, you really needed a strong foundational understanding of your data. And once we started to understand this would have a lot of benefit for our customers, they'd be able to build conversations that would, essentially help them operate more efficiently. Well, then our leadership immediately latched on to that. And they said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What you're doing is you're helping increase the adoption of another product by helping your customers see the opportunities that are in front of them today. And what's great about that is that customers could take the output of this product, go to their leadership with data, and say, hey, I need additional resources so that we can invest in this direction. And if we do so, we should be able to scale our operations. The company wants to grow its headcount. Well, this core team doesn't have to grow as much anymore because we can automate a lot of the problems that they're currently solving, allowing them to really be more strategic in nature for the business.
And that got the team together.
Yeah. So in essence, when you do that, right, and you have this problem statement and you have a network within the company, you can start to socialize that. And what that does is one person knows this person, that person knows that person, and we start to understand the ideas, the problems that we're solving, and that just naturally brought in a lot of top talent into the organization, into that coalition.
I just want to double click on this particular feature, for example, giving the customer the ability to create conversations. So just to make sure I got this correctly. So but basically was a feature that was available to them, but they went and using this in the best way possible according to their needs. Is that how I should understand this?
You should think of it as revealed preferences and then stated preferences, right? So my stated preference as a customer was mostly, I understand that my team is solving problems. Let's optimize the process for solving problems. And so what they would do is they would say okay, my end user as a customer, my end user is going to create this ticket that's going to have a problem statement in there. And it's going to be, now it has to be routed to the right person to solve that problem. So how do I more efficiently just connect this with that person? Yeah. And then once it's in that person's hands, how do I make that person more efficient at solving that problem? Well, maybe I need to connect them with this bit of information, this automation. And what they aren't really thinking of is how do I just solve the problem automatically without having it go through this process in the first place?
Having a more end-to-end
Correct.
process.
So the stated preference was, help me just operate, route these tickets more efficiently. But the reveal preference, when you start to show them that data, is what if I just automate these Outlook issues related to the Zoom plugin, as an example? Right? That's a population of data that I didn't really know how big it was. I had a sense that it was there, but I didn't really know how big it was, and that it was worth creating just a solution just for that problem. And when you start to have that conversation, you turn the discussion from more process to solution at the detailed level. And then they get very excited and they lean in.
Perhaps this also solves a common B2B problem of bloating softwares. Like they will have too many asks, right? Simplify this process, simplify process B as well. But you will have the overall picture of this is the problem you're solving. You can solve it in a much simpler way rather than having too many features.
Exactly.
I don't know if this is a good statement, but it reminds me of how, for example, users in the B2C space kind of tailor LLMs to particular needs instead of like, because at the same time, many of them had to become like creative in order like to create like particular uses for this use. So it looks like something like that in the B2B space to help companies in general, like massive companies with particular needs and particular process and workflows. That good understanding of that this type of problem.
Sort of, right? And like, I think this idea of like, hey, my team is working on problems that are like a variety of problems, which is just, think of it could be anywhere from like troubleshooting software, it could be troubleshooting hardware, it could be updating account information, it could be like infrastructure related. Like the number of problems and the types of them become like they're so spread out that you have domain expertise in those problem areas. And then you have someone who's kind of organizationally sitting on top of the platform saying, I'm more of an administrator of the software and I get those various stakeholders and those teams plugged into this ecosystem so that they can start to solve those problems. Now, what's challenging is that this person doesn't really know what those people are working on. And these people don't understand, or they aren't thinking about, well, how do I automate these problems from going away? Because they're not a part of the platform per se. They're a consumer of it. So when you can say, hey, did you know that, your application team that is owning Miro and Microsoft Teams is working on these types of problems? Well, they can have a healthy dialogue with that team over there. And they say, you know what, if you create these knowledge articles or if you help give me the right data points, I can automate that solution for you, which means these tickets don't have to go to you anymore. And then you can actually focus on the next set of things, like maybe enabling Copilot inside of Microsoft Teams or the AI assistant inside of Zoom. So, it allows them to like kind of accelerate their individual roadmaps because you're providing tactical relief on the actual troubleshooting and the maintenance already out there.
When the services is a part of it and part of your sales is to serve services and more customizations and more features and more work that you are creating for yourself, and that's a way to get more business. So how does that get balanced out with your product work that you're doing? You're trying to simplify their process, but business incentive will be to sell more services. So how to keep the product still usable and have the product mindset while having a services component to the business?
Yeah, so there's multiple market with our companies. So we go direct to the customer and we sell them the product directly. And sometimes we go with our partners and then we sell to the customer directly. What we all try to do in partners as well is we try to get as close to in the box as possible. So we provide out of the box solutions. Now that wasn't always the case. We have customers that needed certain features before those features became productized. And so they were in this customization. But many customers, if you ask them, especially if they were from the very beginning, actually have a mandate to try to get in the box as much as possible.
Okay.
Right? They don't want a customization because that becomes a very difficult thing for them to maintain. And the value for maintaining these customizations just isn't there anymore.
Okay.
Right? They're all trying to go in that direction. And partners also have a reputation to maintain. They don't want to develop that reputation of like, hey, I'm just in it for the billable hours. In fact, that's not really where they should be making money. And I don't think they do. I think they make more money by providing services on top of the platform. Let me tell you how to best organize around this solution. Let me actually help you get there. Let me also help you develop the automations that the system relies on so that you can get more return on this investment. It's one thing to just use ServiceNow out of the box, but then once you start adding the content that it relies on, you get a massive return on that investment.
Okay, great. And next question here. So as if you're coming from the consulting space and now you are in the PM field, I'm curious to know, how do you see the PM field? Is it sort of like a strategic role or rather tactical?
Yeah, I'll go back. One of my mentors at the time told me that strategy is easy, execution is hard. Everybody has an idea. Not everybody can actually execute on that idea. And product management to me is at the center of execution. It really is a tactical role. There are elements of strategy, but I would say by and far, like the majority of the week, the month is execution focused. You're really just trying to get stuff done. The last thing you want to do is be known as the person who just talks about it. So you have to be about it. You got to be able to go out there and actually execute. Now, going back to like what part of it is actually strategy, you really have to understand the problems that you're trying to solve, as well as what other type of problems are being solved that are out there. So you do have to have a pulse on what your competitors are doing, and you have to be able to reverse engineer their products to understand the problems that they're trying to solve, so that you can take that and understand whether or not it's a meaningful problem for you to solve as well. But that happens maybe quarterly, and it's really because the execution cycles, they can be pretty lengthy. I mean, we are in an agile world where we are executing and delivering like weekly, but in terms of changing course, moving the ship in a different direction, you really aren't trying to look for those opportunities too frequently, because if you're always second guessing it, if you're always looking and you find something else to chase, you're never really going to make any progress. So it is about discipline. It's about understanding where you want to go and then defining how you get there. And that exercise, I cannot stress that enough. Just really get into the weeds, execute, and then come back out once in a while, pop your head out, take a look around, see what else is going on out there.
That's super interesting. So you said, Asif, that it's an IC role, it's an execution role where you have to execute, but now you're a director, you have evolved into a leader. So how do you balance being somebody who is execution first, but at the same time you have a leadership responsibility?
Yeah, so I think what I really enjoy about my current role is that I get to learn more problems that all the other PMs are incubating and investigating, right? It is like they are critical source of information. As a director of product management, what I'm looking at is I'm identifying all the problems, or as many as I can find, that our customers are facing today. Then together with the team, we understand, okay, well, who's going to be going deeper into different pockets, problem spaces. So I alluded to this earlier, like you could have we have PMs just dedicated to understanding what is the problem with troubleshooting software. When our customers purchase software applications, they naturally have to maintain this, or they have a team that maintains this. So I have people just looking directly at that problem and really understanding what are all the ins and outs. And if we're going to develop AI agents to solve those problems, what could they possibly be? And so as a director, I'm looking at a macro problem and I'm choosing which ones that I'm going to go focusing on. But what I rely on the team on is more depth understanding in those problem spaces. And that ultimately helps influence the roadmap. And we pitch that to leadership.
I have a good question. So in this high level role as a director, how does the week look like? Like, I'm curious to know, what are those like individual contributor tasks?
Yeah, thank you for, again, it's like, it's a responsibility for me, and I love doing what I do. My day-to-day is, I would say a lot of it is talking to customers. I spend a decent amount. I try to talk to at least 3 to 4 customers a week, get on a call with them, understand like how things are going with the current product, understand opportunities to improve what's currently out there today. So we have customers that are using generative AI today, and then we have customers who are trying to get into more of the AI agents, which is the next step of that. So I'm trying to understand, hey, what are the opportunities for improving the current product? And then I try to also understand, well, what other problems are you trying to solve today that we don't have a solution for just yet? So there's a good amount of my time just, gathering information and then processing information. So I take a lot of what they say and I document it, and I try to really get into the weeds and understand what are the common patterns between the conversations that I had this week, how do they compare against last week, and so forth. But then I also look at the data, right? I try to understand what they're saying, and I try to also understand, hey, what might they not just be aware of, because it's so detailed. And I do spend a lot of time reading a lot of the ticket details. What is it that their end users were asking support for? And then how did that team solve it? I'm trying to understand and develop patterns in the data to make sure that I stay grounded in what my customers are experiencing. That really helps me develop empathy with them. And that translates over time. I would say over the course of a quarter, I could start to then develop a couple of roadmap items that will meaningfully move the needle for the organization.
So your evolution into the role of director, let's double click on that a bit. Like, do you see a pattern where early career PMs struggle, some skill set areas where they struggle, and what would you have to like change, or from your own experience or others, what do you have to change in your skill set to make the next leap to becoming a director?
Yeah, I would say like early in career PMs, I think you're really just developing your craft, right? Like understanding all the traits and like all the things that you need to be doing to be an effective product manager. Again, one of my mentors told me, engineers don't live to serve you. It's actually they be living to serve your engineers. Make sure that they have what they need and that they're nurtured for and that they have everything they can possibly need to be as effective as possible. And then once you get to mid-level, you're starting to dabble into more like a strategic kind of function. And then going from mid to where I am today, I don't know how we would classify that. I think questioning the status quo is something that really, really is something that helped me tremendously. Specifically, what it allowed me to do is confidently just understand like, hey, are we operating the right way? Well, we try to help our customers operate efficiently, but are we ourselves, kind of following in suit? And so really just becomes about like, how do you create more free time for everybody else around you by streamlining processes? But then also when you're going across and you're working with people from marketing, from sales, from, all the different parts of the business, helping them align tighter and closely, getting them to also understand the ultimate customer pain points and how do you position the product in the market. So influencing them and then defining a go-to-market motion that everybody can get behind. It really starts with challenging what you have today. If you aren't feeling like, hey, maybe we aren't necessarily getting all the results that we possibly can, we're doing great, but we could do better, right? Going back to that growth mindset, it's getting everybody else to believe that this is not an indictment on us. It really is just a matter of how well do we all want to do together? Put up the highest score we possibly can as a team, or are we just going to be okay with what we want? I say that question more as like in jest, because naturally the answer everybody always comes to is, we want to work together as a team. And if you go this distance, I'm more than happy to go that distance with you. So getting everybody else and just understanding that, they see in you what you see in them really is, in my opinion, help me. And that's what I think, get to where.
Got it. And that also includes like all these trust building exercises you have to do across closing the loop, maintain the momentum so that they stick by you when you need them.
Correct. Yeah, I think incentive alignment too is a huge part of this. They also want to do a great job. They too have careers that they want to nurture and foster. And if you can find a way to help them and align those types of objectives, if that's what's into it, some people are just truly altruistic, right? And that's totally cool. Some people really want to further their career. So how do you create the environments so that they and yourself can also all benefit at the same time? And it's really about, I think another good book I'd recommend is Split the Pie. It's like you create a lot of value and the only logical way to split it is 50-50 or evenly across all the parties that are contributing to that. And I think once I developed that understanding that it wasn't a zero-sum game in the organization and that you can lean on your parts and you can lean on your different stakeholders and we could all win together, I think that just unlocked a lot more value that I could give back to the organization.
Related to recruiting and also for folks, especially first years, class of 2027 who will be coming soon to campus, I would like to ask you this question. So because it's commonly asked for aspiring PMs if they have to be like really technical or not when they are looking for jobs and when they're looking to pivot into the PM space. I would love to know what's your take on this, considering that we are like basically living in a new era, in a new era. How do you see this? Is this something required for every aspiring PM nowadays, being technical?
It's a great question. And, I struggle with this. I think the most important trait is your curiosity. And you should be curious about the technology as well. And so when I was a consultant, I was actually doing a lot of the work too. I was writing SQL. I was also interacting with the business. And then I'd come back and I'd start playing around with like databases, creating the reports, all that stuff I was doing. I wasn't necessarily the expert in any one of those fields, but I was so curious that it made those conversations with the experts, like the engineers, the data engineers, much more comfortable and amenable to them too, because they saw me leaning in as well. So I think your curiosity, and if you can lean in with the engineers, that really does go a long way. I don't think anyone's really testing for your technical abilities in an interview. They might ask you like word puzzles or something like that just kind of test your way of thinking, but they aren't necessarily, at least not at ServiceNow, we don't necessarily ask people to go deep in a technical lens. to be able to understand whether or not they can perform the job of a PM. Now, let me like give you an example. When I went from consulting to product management at Workday, my technical skills, or at least my curiosity, made it easy for me to write strong business requirements for the engineers. And what I would do is I would just naturally just sit really close to them just to see how it was all being built. And at some point, I was like writing the specs in the way that the engineers would build. And that was actually detrimental, because they were like, wait a minute, you're sucking all the fun out of being an engineer by telling me exactly how this should be written, like how this should be developed. But that was my curiosity really taking over more than anything else. It was like, I was so curious about what they were doing that I eventually started to try to speak their language more. That's where I would pause. I would say, like, be curious, but then also remember the joy that other people have in work is really the solving of the problem. So be curious, try to be technical, but don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. Understand that your curiosity is really going to be the thing that helps you overcome a lot more things in a way that is more sustainable over time. Because if you can be happy and enjoy the process, I think that naturally comes through in any interview process, as well as when you join a company. They will see that curiosity and your excitement. And I think that's what really is a more sustainable path to product management.
You know what I love is that this is another Haas principle that you touched on. Curiosity is almost student always. And for all answers, we have almost checked all the boxes.
Yes.
All the 4 principles are covered so far. So we are in good hands at Haas.
Also, when you mentioned the badges,
Yes.
confidence without attitude,
Yes.
that was also there.
I was trained well.
Great. Now we'll move on to the next section. You mentioned a couple of instances that there were mentors who guided you, and some books as well. We'll made note of that. So my question is, can you mention some specific mentors that have like really played a big role in your career that you would like to give a shout out to? Anybody that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I have a lot of mentors, and so I don't want to leave anyone out. So I'm just going to focus this one to some of the Haasis that I really got to lean on, and more specifically to my time at ServiceNow as well. So 2 people come to mind. There's one by his name is Murli Subra, and he's a group vice president of our solution success team. And what he does is he works very closely with customers, his team, and they go out and they implement Haas that we built. They provide valuable feedback for us in process. Tremendous mentor. He's been so instrumental in my growth. He's one of the nicest people that I met, but he's also has a very strong presence leadership wise that has allowed him to have very strong conversations with our chief product officer. And the other one, his name is Raul Surapaneni. He is now GM Google for their AI cloud. Engineering background. He is very, very strong product leader, but he also has an engineering background at the same time. So, to the technical questions, sometimes it pays to have an engineering background, but that's something that necessarily is correlation doesn't equal causation. But he's a very strong mentor. He's always willing to pick up the phone, always willing to talk. And, he's provided tremendous guidance. And especially as we were getting our generative AI product out the door, he was a very instrumental person to be able to talk to. And what I really liked about him is he embodies the student always principle. So when there was opportunities to learn about how, from an engineering perspective, they can improve, he was always willing to listen and incorporate whatever he thought was valuable at the time. And it's totally okay if not everything is adopted, but as long as the spirit and the communication is open, I think he really embodied that principle.
Interesting. I have a follow-up question. Like you mentioned mentors. Is there some intentionality behind building these mentor relationships that you follow or you will advise people who are watching our audience? How do mentees make good mentor relationships, and how can we be more intentional about it?
There's probably people that are my mentors that they don't even know that they're my mentors, right? And it's like, sometimes I just want to get on someone's calendar, and they're not always recurring events. They're like spontaneous. Sometimes it's in a hallway chat and I just learn something different. Sometimes it's ad hoc. I'll just put time on the calendar, and some of them are recurring. I would say really be intentional about what you want out of your mentorship, right? And I think that's really hard because sometimes I've, especially early in my career, I just find myself on these calls waiting for someone like gift of knowledge to be bestowed upon me. Like something that I could use that would suddenly get me to the next level. And what I realized was, it's not always, that's not going to happen, right? At least I don't think it will. What I started to learn was they become more like sounding boards for problems that you are trying to incubate, either tactical, hey, I'm trying to get this, what do you think about this idea or this problem? Or they become advocates for your problem. And if you I do think like if you're comfortable having those career conversations and asking about it, they can help you get there and they can point out some opportunities for you to improve. One of the best bits of advice that I got here from one of our career counselors was, ask them what they think of you when you're presenting in a room with them. Oftentimes we see the world, I mean, not often, 100% of the time, we see the world through our own lens. Yeah. How often do we actually get to ask another person, hey, what did you think of my presentation? And if that in itself creates a lot of value for you, right? So long as you have that growth mindset and you're willing to accept another person's perceptions of you. Because ultimately you're not there to disprove them or change their mind on how you performed. They were really the jury at that time, and that's how they saw it. And so you need to be able to learn from that. And if you didn't come across the right way, that's the opportunity to learn so that when you show up the next time.
Great. Thanks for making it so far, audience. We are now getting into a quick rapid fire round. So this is changing up some gears. This will be fun. So let's figure out how you respond instinctively to these questions. My first one, your engineering team is hangry. What's your go-to carrot or sticks to keep them motivated?
One of my first product management leaders.
Samosas
Yeah.
with hari chutney. Amazing. Let's talk user feedback. You just discovered that your brand new feature is universally hated. What do you do first?
I understand why.
Understanding why.
Yeah.
Going back to the problem.
Yeah.
You have to rename product manager to make it sound more exciting. Which new title are you going with? Evangelist. Would you explain like problem and evangelist?
Yeah. So evangelizing a problem. So understanding a problem and then evangelizing that it's something that is worth solving with this.
And this connects a lot with what you shared about getting people on board with it.
Great. Pick a superpower for your PM life. I have 4 options for you. A, reading engineers' minds so you can decode everything that they're saying instantly. B, instant empathy so you can exactly know what the customer is feeling. C, infinite prototypes. You can test every wild idea. There's no cost to it, no risk to it. And final 4th, time slowing powers. Your daily stand-ups never run over.
Wow.
In short, reading engineers, instant empathy, infinite prototypes, time slowing powers.
Time.
Why? Time is the most precious resource. Absolutely. Awesome. Kevin, your turn.
So talking about like external perception, if your team was to vote, what title would they give you?
Well, my informal title on the team is captain. So such a fitting question. So I think captain because I'm trying to just point in the direction that we need to go and then create the environment so that we can get there with as much comfort as possible, knowing that it is not easy.
Wonderful. Second, how do you pitch ideas like with Microsoft Word, maybe PowerPoint, maybe Figma, maybe other tool? Do you have a particular preference?
Yeah, I typically pitch. So it depends on the audience, right? So I typically write a lot and knowing that some people will read and then knowing that some people won't. So I try to meet everybody where they are. So start with writing and then go to PowerPoint and then that becomes more the consumable vehicle for some folks.
Do you prefer being data-driven or gut-driven?
Data-driven, for sure. Confidence without attitude, right?
Perfect. What would you say it's your PM superpower?
I think it is empathy. So going back to the superpower question that you asked earlier, like I think I have a pretty strong pulse on the customer and I can just, I try to put myself in their shoes as much as possible. So empathy is something that really, it's ultimately where you start to find like when a problem becomes really sensitive to somebody. So empathy is I think my superpower.
Perfect. I have a lesson here. Okay. Which overuse PM buzzword do you secretly love?
It depends on the circumstance. So, I think MVP gets overused quite a bit. Product market fit. Product market fit to me is very overused. I think people just like to say it, but the definition of it is like, escapes many people. So that's one that product market fit is like, you really know what you're talking about, or are we talking about the same thing? Because I feel like we're already in the market. We already have fit, so why are we still talking?
I think with that, we can wrap up the episode. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing your insights, Asif. It was a good session. What do you think about Vash?
I learned a lot. I want to be a B2B PM, and I asked all the questions I had in my mind. Thanks a lot for being patient with us. Thanks for driving all the way to Haas, to campus. I'm sure this brings back some memories, and you are anyway so active on campus. So thanks for being here for us when we are struggling in our career path.
For having me. These are all great questions, and please don't hesitate to reach out again if you want to talk some more and maybe elaborate on some of the
Great.
Great.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. And guys, for the next episode, please send over some memes so we can keep entertaining our guests and keep you entertained.
Great. See you
Alright.
for the next episode.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Asif. Bye, everyone.